Sonic. Hello, welcome to my review of Sonic Hedgehog 3, the latest hit film in the Sonic the Hedgehog film franchise.
Meow?
And I know some people are real big fans of those first two Sonic the Hedgehog movies. From my perspective, they're a bit of a mixed bag. Clearly, there's some attempt to stay close to the spirit of the Sonic the Hedgehog games and appeal to fans, but I think they fumble a bit in some areas in terms of presentation.
Konichi, what?
An over-reliance on the non-Sonic the Hedgehog characters, the human characters. That was a big problem I had with 2. And also the music. I think the music, the Sonic the Hedgehog series, whether you like it or dislike it, most people I think can agree that it has some pretty great music. And that really has not been very well reflected in the movies, in my opinion, and I think in the opinions of others as well. I went into this movie with tempered expectations because I'm like, okay, I've heard that if you like the first 2 movies, you'll probably like this one. I was kind of on the fence about them. I came in with an open mind, but I'm also like, all right, this could still very well be on that same level of those first 2 movies. I am pleased to say that Sonic 3 does surpass its predecessors in pretty much every category, which is great. The story is more interesting, it has higher stakes. The characters are, while not super complicated, have more going on than they have in previous movies. And the spectacle and scope of everything just feels a lot bigger and more appropriate. Those first 2 movies, they feel kind of small. I don't think they really reflect how quote-unquote epic the Sonic series can be at times in some of its more cinematic entries. In this one, it feels less ashamed to be a Sonic movie and draws by far the most elements from the games. And it doesn't hurt that this is adapting my favorite Sonic game, being Sonic Adventure 2. Have a huge amount of nostalgia for that game and basically everything about it. Obviously, I recognize it has plenty of flaws. I would never claim that it's a perfect game, but boy, do I have a soft spot for it. Seeing it adapted into a movie was neat. I gotta admit it was pretty damn neat. And overall, they did a pretty great job. Plenty of changes from that original source material, but I think it kept the core story that would be important to portray in a movie version. With this movie, I really do think they have elevated this film series trilogy. I was really hoping in the back of my mind that the filmmakers would be able to pull off an adaptation of this game and this story, and seeing that they were actually able to do that was extremely satisfying. An area which probably has seen the most improvement would be the music. The music in this actually incorporates game songs, which, the previous 2 movies did, I would say, about as minimally as they could have. There is technically game music in the first 2 Sonic movies, but barely, man. Like, they really do kind of avoid it. Whereas this entry really does embrace that aspect of the series far better and in a more satisfying way. And it really elevates the whole movie. Without that music, I probably would not have liked it nearly as much as I did. It was definitely probably the biggest highlight for me was hearing familiar songs in the movie theater accompanying this film. So that's my spoiler-free section of the Sonic 3 review. On a numbered scale, I would give it a 7 out of 10. So very solid, enjoyable action-adventure movie. With much higher stakes and overall a higher level of filmmaking than is found in the previous 2 Sonic films, which I rated a bit lower. Now we will talk spoilers. So since this is adapting Sonic Adventure 2, we get a lot of Sonic Adventure 2 elements, and that includes Gerald Robotnik and Maria. And this was the storyline that I really wanted them to get right. Shadow the Hedgehog actually has a pretty good backstory. I think the backstory for Shadow in Sonic Adventure 2 is probably, in my opinion, like the best story element of any of the Sonic games. I think it's actually pretty darn sad and tragic. And they managed to execute that well in this movie and, took it pretty seriously. Shadow as a character in this movie really is very serious. There's almost no comedic relief involved in his characterization or vocal performance by Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is pretty much playing it straight the entire movie. And yeah, so the characterization of Shadow and Maria was actually fairly close to the games and was effective. They don't spend too much time on it. It's actually it's a fairly brief part of the movie. It is somewhat emotionally effective, which, wow, what do you know? A Sonic movie being able to get emotions out of you that's pretty surprising. Would not have expected that from the first two movies, which I don't want to disparage too much, but I am not personally the biggest fan of. And then there's Gerald Robotnik, who is played by Jim Carrey. Gerald and Ivo, the main Robotnik, have a lot of screen time in this movie, and I actually pretty much enjoyed all of it. I think the dynamic between those two is fun. I think Jim Carrey's performance as Gerald is actually distinct enough from Ivo for that performance to work. I actually like that characterization better than I like the main Robotnik. He's like 10% more serious than Ivo is, which I think makes that character just work better as an actual villain. And I enjoyed seeing Sonic work together with Eggman. I think that's something that always is a fun part of the games, is when the stakes get really high and Sonic and Eggman have to team up to dispatch the true final boss. That's always a fun little story element. In terms of other human characters, you have Agent Stone, who is another highlight, as he was in the first two movies as Eggman's assistant. It's a little bit sad when Eggman sacrifices himself at the end of the movie. I was like, okay, well, you actually managed to make a somewhat effective emotional payoff for this joke character. Not bad, fellas. And then you have Sonic's adoptive parents. They were fine in this movie. They were not in it that much, which is good because they're not the most interesting characters, but they were used well. The second Sonic movie, I think what really killed it for me is the infamous wedding sequence. There's this big wedding scene and it's basically just focusing on the human characters, and I found that really dull and unfunny. The equivalent in this movie is a heist sequence in which the characters have to break into the gun base. And I found that scene just overall far more enjoyable. It actually incorporated the Sonic characters alongside the human characters, so that was nice. The other Sonic characters, Tails and Knuckles, are in the movie mostly just as background characters. They don't have too active of a role, but they're enjoyable characterizations. So was happy to see them, and they have both of them have moments to shine, which worked pretty well. There's some minor tie-ins with the Knuckles show, nothing crazy, but something that if you have seen it, you'll probably pick up on. I'll now touch on my favorite element of the movie, but it's something that I was also conflicted about, which was the music. The biggest motif in this movie for music is Live and Learn, the classic Sonic Adventure 2 theme song. It appears in the movie quite a lot. It's essentially just Shadow's theme song, so it plays essentially whenever he's on screen in just orchestral form without lyrics. That was pretty great. I liked that, but it was lacking a little bit in variety. As much as I enjoy Live and Learn, I would have also really enjoyed hearing some more iconic Sonic Adventure 2 tracks like City Escape. There is a scene that references City Escape. You even get a line of dialogue that references that scene. And in the credits, it does say that City Escape was used at some point, the song itself, but I didn't pick up on that anywhere, and I'm a big fan of that song, so I guess it was used really subtly somewhere. Me being such a big fan of that song, not being able to detect it anywhere in the movie makes me question why was it even there at all if you weren't going to properly use it. There are a couple of other Sonic songs, like the main Green Hill Zone theme appears once or twice, and then I think Eggman's theme song appears as a ringtone or something goofy like that. And then the big musical moment is when Shadow and Sonic put aside their differences to go fight Gerald Robotnik, and we get a little bit of Live and Learn, and that was great for the first 15 seconds and then it cuts off. And that was what annoyed me probably the most in the movie, is they give you this really great taste of the full version of Live and Learn, because you've been hearing the notes of it for the whole movie, and then they're finally doing the full version of it with the lyrics, and it cuts off almost as soon as it has started. I don't know if it's actually 15, 20 seconds, but that's really what it felt like. I don't need them to play, you know, the whole like 4-minute version of the song, but a little more would really have been appreciated. You do get more of a full version of Live and Learn that without lyrics in the scene after, because it cuts to a scene from Sonic and Shadow to, I believe, a scene with the Robotniks, and then it cuts back to Sonic and Shadow in super form fighting robots, and you get more of the Live and Learn, but without the lyrics, which I'd say are a key part of that song. So getting just such a small amount of it was kind of irritating. I did like hearing what I heard of it, but it felt like a real missed opportunity. And what also annoyed me is when I was thinking back on other songs that were used in the movie, there is a scene in which the Robotniks have a dance number. Ivo and Gerald dance to, I guess it's a pop song. I think I've heard it in some radio commercials. And so that scene's like at least like a couple minutes, like at least 2 minutes, I'd say, of them dancing to that song, and it's just that song uninterrupted. So they were able to afford that amount of time for just a song that is unrelated to Sonic the Hedgehog, which I'm not really complaining about. I didn't mind that scene. It was, for what it was fun enough. But then, you know, the actual song from the game that's supposed to, you know, be a huge emotional crescendo feels like it's cut off so quickly. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, clearly the priorities were off on that, in my opinion. So that was a choice that did irritate me actually quite a bit. Even though I would say the music is hugely improved, it's still definitely not perfect and not something that I would have done if I was the one making these kinds of decisions for the movie. I'll touch on some other highlights that I enjoyed. And that final battle with Shadow and Sonic was really good action. I liked seeing Sonic actually get serious in this movie. The movie actually draws parallels between Sonic and Shadow, and how Shadow didn't have a support system, and so got consumed by revenge. So that actually worked pretty well. And they have a nice scene where they're talking to each other on the moon, which logistically is probably a bit odd, but you know, it worked for the movie. Okay guys, one thing I just thought of that I need to mention, they didn't have the freaking bio-lizard in this movie, man. And that made me kind of sad. So I guess he is referenced, because I looked online, and there's a scene where Shadow and Maria are watching a movie, like a Godzilla type kaiju movie, and I guess the monster there is supposed to be the bio-lizard. I didn't pick up on that. Oops. But so there's a reference to the bio-lizard in the movie, but he doesn't actually show up himself. He doesn't rear his fat ugly head, and that's a crying shame in my view. You know, I've seen some people clown on the bio-lizard lately, and you know, I guess I could see why. Like, he's not the most compelling character, but I don't know. I guess I just like that design and that his place in the story. I think he's a cool final boss. So, you know, I mean, the movie's already got a lot going on, so I guess they didn't have room for a giant lizard final boss, but shoot, I mean, would have been nice to see him. Oh well. So overall, really good stuff. I do have my complaints, like my nitpicks with the music. Some of the editing was actually pretty choppy. I think I've noticed this in some of the other Sonic the Hedgehog movies. But even if you compare some of the trailer footage to footage in the final movie itself feels a bit chopped up at times. The continuity of objects and characters in the frame can kind of slide around a bit. It does feel a bit overly edited, which is probably because they have just so much time to cover and they want to keep it below like 2 hours, which this movie is, which I did like. It does fly by pretty fast, but that, you know, could be at the cost of giving some of these scenes a little bit more breathing room, perhaps. Now I'll touch on the post-credit sequences. So Shadow and Eggman sacrifice themselves at the end of the movie to stop the big space laser, the space colony arc type thing, which was fun to see adapted into live action. That was cool. They blow up the moon, so got that checked off the list of things you need in a Sonic Adventure movie. And so then our first post-credit scene, we get some Metal Sonics show up, and you're like, oh, it's Metal Sonic, wow. And then Amy shows up to dispatch some of the Metal Sonics. And I gotta say, I don't think there's that much they could have done that would have been more exciting than Shadow showing up at the end of Sonic 2. But for me, this didn't really excite me that much. I'm just like, okay, I guess that's what you would do with a sequel to this movie, is incorporate Metal Sonic and then Amy. So as a character, I don't find Amy showing up that exciting. That's not like a big exciting reveal for me. I guess we'll see what they do with this film version of that character. And then with the Metal Sonic plotline, I don't really know what they're gonna do with that, what the origin of Metal Sonic is gonna be. Obviously there's gonna be several of them, so I don't know what game they're really gonna be pulling from. Of course, Metal Sonic and Amy originate from Sonic CD, but I guess they might adapt something in the vein of that. That isn't something that excites me nearly as much as an adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2. I'm not super excited for whatever's to come next for the Sonic series, personally, which is fine, because, you know, this movie gave me essentially what I wanted, which was an adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2 that mostly stays faithful to the important points of that story. I'd felt like a missed opportunity not to incorporate the city of San Francisco at any point into the story, which I guess is because they already did that in Sonic 1. The climax of that movie takes place in San Francisco, so I guess it might have felt like a bit of a retread to go back there for this movie, and in its place you have stand-ins like Tokyo and London as the big cities they go to. You know, a big part of Sonic Adventure 2's identity is San Francisco. It's, you know, the first level, City Escape, takes place there. Having the Sonic Adventure 2 ideas and vibe, but not having San Francisco in there, slightly disappointing. Not a super big deal, but you know, that's something that I would like to see. I would have wanted to see in an idealized version of this movie that, you know, was meeting every specification that I would have wanted. Oh, we also got chows incorporated in the Chow Garden. It's like a little gimmick restaurant in Japan in the movie, where they have mascot costumes of chows. And that was fun. That was a fun way of incorporating Chow into the world of the Sonic movie in a semi-realistic way. That was a bit of a detour, but the second post-credit scene was basically just that Shadow was alive, which is not a huge revelation. I didn't, you know, in the original Sonic Adventure 2, obviously they ended up bringing Shadow back to life in subsequent titles, so not super surprising. And obviously Shadow is going to be I think a big popular character from this movie. He's big part of the marketing, so they're definitely going to want to bring him back either in a Sonic movie sequel or his own spin-off TV show or movie. I'd say that's very likely. So I like Sonic movie 3. What can I say? It appeals to me. It ticked the boxes it needed to. It did its own thing in some places. Like there's some just fun, goofy scenes, like Ivo and Gerald go into VR and like make up for lost time when Gerald was in jail, and they do all these goofy little skits of Jim Carrey acting against himself, which is just, you know, it's just stupid and fun. There's like a weird little telenovela that Eggman watches, which is incorporated a couple of times, which works. I think the weirder it gets, the more I like it in terms of the comedy. I liked how they dispatched Gerald. It was really like, it was really fast, and you're just like, oh, I guess he's just dead now. Oh, Jesus Christ. Speaking of quick character deaths, the General Olive Garden from the previous movies, who I really dislike as a character. I hate that his like main gimmick is that he likes Olive Garden. I think that's really goddamn lame. But in this movie, he shows up in one scene and is like dead, and you're like, oh okay. I guess he's like actually just dead now. But that felt like what I was talking about, the editing being a bit choppy. His death scene felt pretty choppy. You're like, oh, that didn't seem like that's the kind of thing that would have killed a character. There's this big explosion and he's under some rubble and he seems fine, but then you're like, oh, he's just dead, I guess. Yeah, so certainly not without flaws, but as a movie-going experience, it is very fun. And one that I would recommend, you know, to most movie-going audiences, I'd say. The previous two Sonic movies, I have more caveats. I think it's a fun theme park ride type movie if you're just a general audience member. It's quality entertainment. You know, I wasn't sure I was gonna make a Sonic Movie 3 review, but I saw it, and, you know, I had just such a good time. I had such a positive experience overall that I was like, yeah, this is worthy of discussion, because I really enjoyed it. I've played through Sonic Adventure 2 so many times. Just a real special game to me. So this was a really nice love letter to it. Thank you, Sega. Thank you, Jeff Howler. Thank you, Paramount. Certainly better than Red 1, which I watched the other day. Holy Christ in heaven, that was dismal, brother. You don't even know.
Breach! Someone took Nick. That was so disturbing.
Good God. Okay, bye.